I think it's the end of the world.
Looks like I've seen it all. Well, that's it for me. I'm glad it's you, Chunky.
It's not the end. It's just the beginning. Welcome to our tomorrow!
You'll never believe who we just found.
Guy?
Dawn?
Guy! Is it really you?
It's you! You're here!
You're so old!
So are you!
That's what I said!
Oh, together again.
These two were inseparable when they were young. Inseparable.
Dawn's a girl?
Hold on, stop. You accessorize with a sloth? I accessorize with a sloth. This is Belt.
Mine's Sash.
These are the Croods.
Hello.
Hey.
What's up? And this, no, yeah, this is Eep.
You're a girl?
Yeah?
A girl.
Friend! I've never had a girlfriend before! Neither me either!
Okay, careful. Almost.
Extra vertebrae! Oh, this is amazing! What do we do? What do we say to each other? What's happening to our voices? What are our voices getting
Whoa, what's that mark on your wrist? Oh, this is just a scar.
Scar?
Yeah, from a thorned crab. No big deal.
Whoa! And that?
Razor worm,
What about that one?
scorpion badger, swamp snake, sky snake, volcano, end of the world. My little sister, she bites a lot. And my dad doesn't even know about this one.
Whoa, peanut toe.
Hi, guy!
Hey, you.
Where'd you go?
Took Chunky for a joyride.
Joyride?
Joyride?
We rolled to death.
Outside the wall.
You took Dawn for a joyride outside the wall.
Yeah.
Well, the Bettermans, they don't want Dawn outside the wall. They built the wall for a reason, you know, to keep everyone safe.
Guy, relax.
Yeah, guy. Take it down low.
What's wrong with her?
It's just a reaction to the bee venom.
Bee venom?
Bee venom!
What the?
It's just a little bee sting.
Little!
Hey, you're not the boss of me!
This is a very severe... Eep, this is a very severe bee sting!
This is a very severe bee sting.
Fine.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joel Crawford, and I'm excited to share this today with you. I'm so happy. I wish we could all be in person, but it's going to be just as fun. I am Joel Crawford. I am the director of Croods, A New Age. And as a director, I have a pretty fun job. I get to come up with an idea for a story that would be fun to tell and use a really talented team of artists to tell that story and bring it to life. So maybe you've seen the first Croods, maybe you've seen Croods, A New Age, or just seen the clip that we just showed. Either way, you probably recognize something about the Croods world. It's not like ours, right? The animals, they don't look like the animals we have. There's a reason for that. The Croods story takes place long ago in a prehistoric time we call the Cretaceous period. Now, I know what you're thinking. You kids are like, Joel, I go to school. I've learned all about the history of the Earth. I know about the Jurassic period, the Triassic period, but I've never heard of this Cretaceous period you speak of, right? That's because we made it up. Yeah, that's true. We're telling a fictional story, but we used our imaginations and said, what if there was a time that no one knew existed, where the world was young and trying to figure out what animals could look like, and it took two different kinds of animals and mashed them up. I like to call these Croodimals, because it takes the word crude and animal and puts it together. So during this Cretaceous period, there were hundreds of creatures that we created. And behind me, I have a few of just my favorites that I wanted to share with you guys real quick. All right, come here, come closer, let's see. All right, let's see. Ooh, check this guy out. This is a rumblebee. It's a combination of a bumblebee and a rhino. It's about that big, and its sting hurts a lot. All right, check this out. Oh, she's awesome. This right here is called a Kangadillo. If you notice, she's got a little baby in the pouch and has strong legs like a kangaroo for jumping. But she can also fold into an armored ball like an armadillo, giving her the name Kangadillo, right? All right, one more. Let me see. Okay. You guys know what a pterodactyl is, right? Big dinosaur-like thing that's scary and flies. Well, we have a pterodactyl. See this guy? Maybe not quite as scary, but quite fun. I wish I could go on forever about all these fun crudimals. And actually later today, we're going to have one of our very own DreamWorks artists teach you how to draw a Croods creature. So that should be fun. They have so much fun stuff planned today. I hope you have a great time at Camp Croods. Right now, I'm going to kick it off to Chris.
All right, thank you so much, Joel, for that wonderful introduction. Loved seeing those different animal mashups. Now we're going to go directly into my introduction. So welcome everyone to Camp Croods at the La Brea Tar Pits with the Natural History Museum and DreamWorks. We're so glad to have you here with us today. This very special programming is being made possible by our collaboration with Universal Pictures Home Entertainment and DreamWorks Animation. Now, Camp Croods is a way for us at the museum to show all of you how our team learns about the Ice Age and how we share that information with you, the public. So I'm going to start us off by introducing myself. My name's Chris Ludwig, and I've been working at the museum in education for the past 8 years. I've spent time working with our summer camp program as well as doing outreach with Los Angeles District Schools. Now today I will be hosting our program, so you'll see me sticking around throughout the program. Now, before we get started, make sure you have a pencil and paper with you for later on. In terms of you all, we want you to participate today. Now, today is a special media session that's running slightly different than our 2 public programs. Those will be happening later in the week in webinar format, and we won't be able to see everyone there, whereas right now we can see all of you, which is very exciting. In this meeting, we do have the chat set up so that if you'd like to ask a question, there'll be different moments when we call specifically on people, but if you have a question that comes up in between those moments, feel free to use the chat, send a message to Ilana, our Q&A helper, and we'll be kind of collating all those questions for the appropriate moments. When we do ask for questions as well live, we'll take some from that list that's been collated from your questions, and then if you have any questions in person, we can raise our hand and we'll give you a chance to ask your question directly to us if we get time for that. So we'll be able to see you on the screens, which will be great. All right. Now let's get into our schedule for today. So we're going to be talking about and learning about life during a time period kind of similarly portrayed in the Croods A New Age. Obviously a little bit different, as Joel told us. It's kind of a fantastical version there. We're going to be kind of going into what really, the world really looked like. So to do that, we'll be meeting several members of the La Brea Tar Pit staff who work on learning about our world and teaching what we've learned. So first, I'll be giving all of you a brief introduction to the tar pits and what life was like here in the past. After that, we'll be digging into what Laura Tewksbury, our paleontologist, has to show us about fossils from her lab at home. And after that, we'll be getting a look into the animated world of DreamWorks story artist Heidi Jo Gilbert. Now, once that's done, our very own museum educators Damaris Osuna and Diana Sanchez will lead us in creating our own version of an Ice Age animal. And lastly, we'll be checking in with Brian Meredith and Mark Whitten from the Performing Arts team to see how they turn science into art. Let's say hello to everyone now. Hi, everyone. Give a wave for all of our friends here that are joining us. Excellent. So that's our team. You'll be seeing their screens. They're going to go back off for a bit while I get into a little bit of an introduction into the tar pits. So let's start by learning a little bit more about the Ice Age and the tar pits. And we're going to start that off by thinking about what a fossil is, right? What do you think of when you hear the word fossil? I'm really curious about what you all think a fossil is. I'm going to have a poll come up in just a second here, and you can tell me what you think. So our choices are a bone that's turned into stone, an imprint of a plant that was preserved, an insect stuck in amber, a bone preserved in asphalt, or all of the above. I'll give you a few seconds to fill that out. Once it looks like a lot of us have done that, we'll close it up. Okay, well, getting some interesting results, liking what I'm seeing. Looks like we've got some very knowledgeable people with us, which I love. And we'll give you just a few more seconds to fill out our poll. Maybe 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, we'll close the poll up for now. And let's share those results. It looks like many of us realize that a fossil is, yes, all of the above, definitely. It is all of those things. So a fossil can actually be many different things. And you might be surprised that things like teeth, insects, plants, even poop can fossilize, right? So we can even get things, creatures getting stuck in amber and asphalt that turn into fossils. Now, let's look a little bit more specifically at the tar pits, right? What are the tar pits? Well, we might think of this when we see the tar pits, but there is much more to discover. This part of Los Angeles is the only actively excavated urban location for Ice Age fossils in the entire world. In the course of the last 50,000 years, many animals, plants, and insects were trapped here in the asphalt, which did the work of preserving them for us today. And to let you all know, the name tar pits is actually a little bit misleading. The sticky substance you're thinking of is actually called asphalt, which is the lowest grade of crude oil. It comes from an oil field that's about 1,600 feet below the surface of LA. Now, that asphalt seeps up through the earth and slowly oozes out onto the surface. The pits were in reality a small layer of asphalt that animals would get stuck in and would often only be a few inches deep. The reason it looks like pits to us today is because over a long period of time, the layers of earth and asphalt built up and formed a large deposit, which once we dig that whole deposit out, it's really big and we call it a pit because we've dug it out. Now, how do the animals get trapped in the asphalt if it's only a few inches deep, you might be thinking. Right? That's what I was thinking when I first learned about it. So the asphalt is actually extremely sticky, especially when it gets hot. If you've ever been to LA in the summer, you know it can get quite hot here. Now, smaller animals or insects, even just coming to rest on some of the asphalt, could get stuck, just like a fly on flypaper. For larger animals walking over an area with even a few inches of asphalt, they might find themselves stuck due to the sticking power of that asphalt. Now, some animals probably got away, but weaker ones would get stuck until dying of exhaustion. Just one big herbivore, like a large ground sloth or like a mammoth in the picture there, they might attract dozens of predatory animals like the saber-toothed cat, pterodactyls, which are like a really big bird, or even a pack of dire wolves to the area, some of which would get stuck in their attempt to eat it. Now, thousands of years later, the remains of these animals ended up together in these kind of large clumps, right? And they look kind of like our next slide here. Now, due to the asphalt being so gooey when it's warm, it led to bones, rocks, and sand all mixing and jumbling together for our scientists to puzzle out. This means that when we excavate, our scientists like Laura have to be very careful when they dig through each deposit, as they never know what they'll find next. Now, you might be wondering how these fossils tell us about what the world was like when those animals were alive. Well, interestingly enough, the really big fossils that you might see in our museum only give you a small idea of what it would have been like here in Los Angeles. These larger animals would have been moving around depending on where their food sources were, and they wouldn't really cue us in on the local Los Angeles environment. What our scientists have realized is that in order to really tell what it's like to living here in the past during that time, is that they'd have to look at something called microfossils. So microfossils, as you might imagine, are fossils that are very small and are often looked at with a microscope because of their size. As you can see here, things like seeds, insect parts, small animal bones or teeth, those would all be considered microfossils. You can see some of those in the picture there. Now, these plants and animals would have spent their whole lives in one area, and for our scientists, that means they can get information on what it was like right here in Los Angeles. One thing that helps them with is that many of these plants and animals are still around today, so they can look at those and figure out what kind of a climate the Los Angeles area had in the past. So once we have all this great information from our scientists, we want to share it with people like you. That means our team of educators and artists need to work together with our scientists. For example, when our scientists discover a skeleton of an animal and piece together its bones, they can actually make an educated guess on how it would have moved. What that means is that they can tell our artists what would be realistic when artists are portraying the animals for our guests. Very cool. Now, to learn a little bit more in depth about these fossils, we're going to be heading over to Laura. And remember, she is a paleontologist at the La Brea Tar Pits. Now, her favorite animal at the museum is the dwarf pronghorn because they are super duper cute. And if they weren't extinct, she would want to have one as a pet. Now, for those of us that are 14 or younger, Laura has been working on fossils at the tar pit since before you were born. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you, Chris. So first, I'd like to share a brief introduction to our current fossil excavations. In just a moment, I'm going to have some slides set up. There we are. So this is a picture of Pit 91, one of the early 1900s excavation sites that was reopened with better safety and science in mind around 50 years ago. These days, it's usually only worked on for a few months during the middle of the summer, but enough fossils have been recovered to keep the laboratory inside our museum busy year-round. This is one of those pits that Chris mentioned, where over time we've dug into the ground. Once down there, we build walkways to help us get around without stepping on fossils. Here are some of our team from the summer of 2007. Hey look, that's me. We carefully dig through the sticky asphaltic sands and record detailed information about each fossil as we remove it. Now imagine finding 16 of these where you want to build an underground parking garage. And that's what happened to the art museum that shares the park with us. A team of paleontologists worked with a construction team and a landscape company that specializes in moving live trees by building boxes around the root balls. They built a total of 23 boxes around entire sections of Earth and moved them over to our side of the park. We call it Project 23. Can you see the wooden walls in this picture? Hey, look, there's me again. In this way, we're able to work on the fossils in context, digging in the ground while on the ground. Because the fossils in Project 23 aren't as protected as those in Pit 91, we usually work on them year-round, and I'm looking forward to getting back to it. Now, I've got 4 different kinds of animals I'm going to talk about, so let's dig in. The first of the fantastic Cretaceous creatures I'd like to talk about is this one, Chunky, the Carnivore. So let's go ahead and do another poll. Which of our fossil animals does he look like the most? Some of those options are Saber-Toothed Cat, Mammoth, Ground Sloth, and Millipede. I'm gonna go ahead and let you guys keep putting your little votes in. Trying to give enough time for that. All right, gonna give it just a few more seconds to make your guesses. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll now and see what our results are. All right, looks like most of us guessed Saber-Toothed Cat, which is correct. But if you guess one of the others, don't worry, I'll be talking about them today too. I did this on purpose. One of the main ways that he's different from a saber-toothed cat is his size, however. Here's a moment from the new movie, The Croods: A New Age, where we can see just how large Chunky is compared to the rest of the Crood pack. He's around 10 to 11 feet tall at the top of his head. That's a bit taller than the saber-toothed cats that we find here at the La Brea tar pits. You can see this image here, made by a scientific illustrator, showing our 5 big cats that we find fossils of with a human for scale. Hey look, there's me, again. Yes, I made my own presentation. So of these, the saber-toothed cat, called Smilodon fatalis, is the most common. To make the best guesses as to what these extinct animals look like, now that they're not around anymore, we have to look at what we find left of them, the fossils. Like Chris mentioned, fossils can be many kinds of things, but here, for saber-toothed cats, that means bones. When we find the bones of an extinct animal that isn't around anymore, we have to use the bones of extant animals that are still around to make our best guesses about how everything fits together. For saber-toothed cats, that meant looking at other big cats, like lions. When we first put saber-toothed cat skeletons together, we thought that their feet might look like lions, with the claws at the middle toes of the paw bigger than the index and pinky toes. However, when building our museum, some of the fossils that were found were not all jumbled up like you saw earlier, but belonged to specific individuals. One of these is a saber-toothed cat, and that's where we learned that our guesses before were all thumbs. I love my own jokes. As it turned out, our saber-toothed cat's feet went from the biggest claw on the thumb down to the smallest on the pinky toe. You might think we'd be sad to be even doing it wrong, but really, we were excited to learn more about how this animal was put together tens of thousands of years after it died. Science's strength is that it's always being updated, and I love that that means that there's always more to be learning. So even though people like me have been looking at the fossils here for such a long time, we still find new and interesting things. However, even the repeat bones still help us build a better understanding of what life was like here in ancient Los Angeles. With common animals like the saber-toothed cat, we find a lot of repeats among our millions of fossils. This is the bottom of the main deposit of Box 1 of Project 23, where you can see an example of how many fossils we find jumbled up together. They all have their stories to tell, but today I'm going to focus on this particular type of bone. This is a repeat of that same bone. This one's from Box 9 of Project 23. It's a saber-toothed cat humerus, or upper arm bone. The round area at the top is called the head of the humerus, and that's the ball portion of the ball and socket of the shoulder joint. It still has some matrix on it, which is mostly asphaltic sands. We try to only remove enough of that so that we can untangle it from the other large fossils and measure where it is in three-dimensional space. The rest of that preparation is done by my coworkers in the laboratory inside the museum. They're the ones who will be looking for the small microfossils that Chris talked about in the sandy matrix that's stuck to the larger fossil. I like to share this fossil because we found this humerus, and I thought that you might find my joke humorous. Next slide. I also like to share this particular bone because it has many muscle attachment points that are easy to see. These are an example of the types of evidence we use to help build better understandings of how it looked, how it moved, how it hunted, when we're only finding their bones. We don't find their softer tissues like muscles, but we can still see clues that the muscles leave on the bones. Most of the ridges and bumps on this fossil give us information about the muscles of the saber-toothed cat, but the one I chose today is this crest here, where the deltoid muscle attaches. The deltoid is a large muscle responsible for lifting the forearm and giving the shoulder its range of motion. Understanding this range of motion is important for scientists and artists when trying to accurately represent what these animals might look like and how they could have moved when they were alive with all of their flesh and fur. Let's keep this idea in mind when we're seeing the different artists later today help bring creatures to life in our imaginations. But I have 3 more animals to talk about, so I'd better get a move on. One of the new creatures we meet in the Croods of New Age are mammoths. The closest animals we have to a mammoth are mammoths, Mammuthus columbi, like this one here. They're probably much less furry than mammoths, which would have made them more comfortable strolling around in the surprisingly pleasant weather of Ice Age Los Angeles. Just like the saber-toothed cat found during the construction of our museum, the partial skeleton of an individual mammoth was found as part of Project 23. Deposit 11's mammoth, or nicknamed Zed, has made many parts of his skeleton available to us through the times, and they give us a sneak peek into his life. He's had several pathologies, like healed injuries on his ribs and on his lower back, which is the lumbar vertebrae at the middle portion of this top image. And his teeth and his lower jaw here let us guess his age when he died, which is likely around 48 years old. Specialists have even been able to take samples of one of his tusks and learn about what his environment was like during his life, similar to looking at tree rings. Finding associated individuals like these are kind of like finding selfies sent through time. Now, the third animals I want to talk about are the adorable sloths, Belt and Sash. They each weigh about 5 pounds, which is a good weight if you were to wear one as an accessory. They most closely resemble a modern bradypus tree sloth from Central and South America, which can weigh anywhere from 5 to 22 pounds, depending on the species. That's starting to move into heavy backpack range for me personally. However, that would still be more reasonable to carry around than the sloths that we find fossils of at the tar pits. The most common of those sloths that we find is called Paramylon harlani, or Harlan's ground sloth. These extinct cousins of modern-day tree sloths are called ground sloths because that's where they would spend their time, as about 2,000 pounds is too heavy to climb around in trees. It's also much too heavy to wear as an accessory. My final animal is another one that's worn as an accessory, however. The youngest member of the Crude pack, Sandy, wears millipedes in her hair to keep it out of her face. We also find fossil millipedes at the tar pits, like this one you can see me holding my hand in this photo. Do you see all the rings that connect to make its armor-like exoskeleton? We can use those rings to help identify which type of millipede they were from. And unlike the other animals I've talked about today, millipedes are extant or still around. In fact, most of the species of animals and plants that we find microfossils of are still around somewhere, which means that we can study living individuals to compare with our fossils. And here we have a photo of a modern spirabolid millipede hanging out in its favorite place, a pile of leaf litter. And here we have a photo of some of the fossil quercus or live oak leaf litter that we found in part of Project 23, once the asphaltic sands and silts and clays were washed off with chemicals. Many of these smaller animals and plants, because they don't travel as far during their lives, tend to be much pickier about where they live. But that means that they give us more specific clues about what Los Angeles was like tens of thousands of years ago. Studying the past helps us better understand the present and make predictions about the future. And that's why we keep excavating the fossils at our site, to look for more clues to help us better understand our world. Even though we've been studying the site for over 100 years, just like the Crude pack, we still have more stories to tell.
Thanks, Laura. That was amazing. You really held my attention, like a fossil in the asphalt. Now we should have, we do have, looks like a couple minutes for question taking. We'll have some time here for sure. And yes, as Marisol wrote there, please place your questions in the chat box. Or if someone had one, you can raise your hand as well, and we can unmute you, and you can share your question, and then Laura can answer it. Does anyone have any questions? Oh yeah, we got some hands up already. Okay, let's start with yeah, Rafi, is that correct? Here, let's unmute you.
Yep, I got it. Lara, great presentation. I love it. Question: what is the most recent fossil that you guys found, and I mean, how old is it? What was the most recent, and how old is it?
So recent, I'm guessing not the date that we dug it up, but how old it was geologically speaking.
Yep.
Just making sure. Right now, our current excavations run about 30 to 50,000 years old, but at other places of our site, we have things all the way up to around 10,000 years. And then we do have bones that are not necessarily of fossil or extinct animals, but bones that are found that, you know, are in more of the hundreds of year range. But the fossils that we're looking at are between about 10 to 50,000 years at our site.
Cool. That's cool.
So many clarifications, sorry.
Yes, very great question. Thank you. Yeah, Marina, is that right? Yes, do you want to ask your question? Here,
if we can get her unmuted.
Here, I did it. I asked her.
Perfect.
There we go.
Hey, what's the most exciting thing you've ever excavated?
Oh, that's so hard. It's one of those where I almost am like, please don't ask. Because as you may have been able to guess, I'm a very excitable person. And I'm one of those people where it doesn't matter if it's a freshwater snail or a saber-toothed cat or a ground sloth, like I'm excited. As Chris mentioned, my favorite of our animals is the dwarf pronghorn. It's an extinct species that's related to the North American pronghorn, and I think they're fantastic. And they're not as studied as they could be, but that gives me work to come back and do later. Gosh, I mean, there's so many days. There's, you know, just in box one that we saw a couple pictures of I used today, we had a single day that I found 2 separate saber-toothed kitten sabers within like before and after lunch. Like just so happens. So every day is exciting. But then the freshwater snails are really cute too. I can't decide. Sorry.
Great question. Thank you. All right, let's go to Waverly. I'm going to have you unmute.
So it seems like a very interesting job, but like, what's the hardest part of it?
Ooh, the hardest part for me is usually dealing with the things we didn't expect, because we do work outside in the middle of a city, and sometimes there's all sorts of exciting challenges that I was like, oh, you know, right now I'm working from home office, but sometimes when I'm on site, there's construction projects going around nearby. So it's one of those where I was trying to talk with someone the other day, and all of a sudden just like loud crashes and bangs happen. And I was like, we're in the middle of a city, congratulations. So the day-to-day things aren't as hard anymore at this point, but the unexpected ones still get me every once in a while. Sorry, it was not a great answer.
No, I think that was a very interesting answer. All right, I've got a very excited looking friend down there in Rachel Barnhauser's chat there. You want to unmute? Oh, actually, we got to unmute you, don't we? There you go.
We have the power.
We have the power. That's right.
How long does a woolly mammoth live for?
So we don't have woolly mammoths. We have their less hairy and taller cousins, because the ice sheets in North America never came down as far as Los Angeles, because their weather's always been pretty nice, for the last tens of thousands of years at least. But I don't know off the top of my head, but usually mostly around 50 to 60 years would be the oldest individuals. So 48 is still, he was an older gentleman at his age, if that answers.
Thank you.
That's a great question. Yeah, we do still have time for a couple more. So let me look at our chat. I know we had some good ones in here. Oh, how many fossils did we find in Project 23?
Oh, Project 23, we have not finished counting all of the fossils we found from it yet. I'm very, very comfortable saying hundreds of thousands of fossils, but if eventually, once we count every single lizard scale, mouse toe, insect leg, seed pod, freshwater snail shell, and all of the larger fossils, if it ends up being millions, I won't really be surprised. But I can comfortably say hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, quite a few. All right, we got time for a couple more. I'm going to unmute Tanya.
How many bones does the saber-toothed cat have?
Oh, well, that's a great question because I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's several hundred. And if I sat there and thought about it, I could count them all, but I don't think that we have time for that now. But since I'm a scientist, I'm allowed to use I don't know as an answer. It's perfectly legitimate. Another thing I love about science.
That's right. And actually, to follow that up, somebody wanted to know if we've ever found any saber-toothed cat heads.
Heads?
Yeah.
So yeah, the skulls, both the skull itself and the lower jaw, we have many of them. Just me, myself, I've probably found a dozen or so over just the last decade or so. Because again, they're going to be less common for us to find than something like a rib or a piece of vertebrae, a piece of spine or a toe or something like that, purely because every individual saber-toothed cat only has one skull, but it has many of those other bones. So statistically speaking, we don't find them as often, but they're very common at our site. So we still find them pretty commonly.
Laura, in fact, is that one behind you?
That is, but it's a copy of one. But that's a copy of a saber-toothed cat skull. Oh, yes.
Excellent, yes.
It's my decorations.
And Christy, I see Christy's hand up. Let's go to them in our unmuting you. There you go.
Hi. Caleb, do you want to ask your question or want mommy too? Caleb wants to know how many years ago did the saber-toothed cats live?
So the saber-toothed cats in our area went extinct along a lot of the other large animals around 10,000 years ago. And it's definitely one of those things that is still having a lot of science looking into the exact reasons why. But the short answer is it's complicated.
Thank you.
But about 10,000 years ago.
Excellent. And we're going to be taking more, of course, for Laura at the end as well. One more before we go. How important is a film like this to your job? Great question.
Oh, that is a great question. I didn't think to add something like that in here. But me personally, I love movies like this because they give a wider audience of people a sense of some of these animals where I can kind of be like, oh, have you seen the Croods movie? Have you seen Chunky? So, you know, and then they can visualize that. And then I can describe the ways that my saber-toothed cats are different. Like, okay, now imagine with a short little bobtail, and probably not as colorful, the head a little bit smaller, and I can like describe the differences. But I really love the fact that we can actually start out with a frame of reference that we share and build from there, rather than me just trying to describe something like some medieval storyteller trying to inscribe something that I've never seen.
Yes. All right. I just was told that we got time for one more. Renesha, do you want to ask yours? Let's unmute you. She might be having a problem. That's okay. We can always come back later.
I'll be here.
Yes, that's right. Let me see if there was one more going in the chat. I think we answered a lot of the questions in the chat as well. Excellent. Oh, here we go. Oh, how many fossils have you found, Laura?
Me personally, again, that's something that I haven't counted, but I'm very comfortable saying tens of thousands.
Wow.
I'm incredibly spoiled, but I've been there long enough, and many of our fossils are small enough that I feel very comfortable. It's one of those where I'm kind of like, oh, I specifically found 53 fossils today. Okay. Today was a good day.
Excellent. Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Laura. Like I said, we'll be able to ask Laura more questions at the end of the program, as well as our whole team, as long as we have time. So Laura's going to head out for now. And bye, Laura. For our next demonstrations, I want you to get those pencils and paper ready because we have a DreamWorks story artist, Heidi Jo Gilbert, who's going to show us how to draw just like she does. Welcome, Heidi. Take it away.
Hi, guys. My name is Heidi Jo Gilbert, and I'm a story artist from the Croods: A New Age. So I've been drawing these characters for a couple years now, And today I'm going to show you how to draw Chunky. So yeah, grab your pencils and paper. Let me start to share my screen. All right. So this is what we're going to be drawing. It's Chunky, the carnivore. And let's get started. So first, we're just going to start with the circle for his head. And then I like to draw little crosshairs to show which direction he's looking. So this is going to be his eye line. And don't worry if it's not very clean. You can see I draw pretty rough all the time. All right, so once you got that circle, we're going to draw an oval for his rib cage right below. And then again, I kind of like to mark this is going to be that front of his rib cage right there. And then after that, we're just going to follow where his spine would be, so line back. And he's going to have a break right here, right around where his hips are. All right. Then to help us draw his back legs, I always like to draw a little guide, kind of like where his skeleton would be first. So I'm just going to start with a little line here. And then another slanted line. And then this last line is going to be pretty parallel to that first line. And that's going to be the skeleton for his back leg. And to draw the front of his leg, it's going to be kind of like a little S curve down to where his foot's going to be. And then the back side, this is going to be his heel. And then for his foot, we're just going to draw a little like rounded triangle shape. That's going to be his paw. All right, there's one of his back legs. Let's block in that second one. So same thing, we're just going to start with a little line for where his skeleton would be. And then a little slanted line here. And then that last one is going to be somewhat parallel to that first one. And there's his back leg. So let's do that little S curve again. And this foot's going to be a little bit farther back in space than that front foot. So you want the bottom to be somewhere around here. Block in his back heel. And then again, a little triangle shape, kind of rounded off for his back paw. All right, once we got that, let's do his belly. So you want to start at the bottom of his rib cage and just kind of connect up to where his leg is. Another little S curve. And then for his front leg, we're just going to draw a little, kind of a little oval here for where his shoulder blade is. And his elbow should come out right around where the bottom of his rib cage is. And we can just draw a line down for his leg. And it kind of tapers here as you get closer to the bottom. And then just like we did before, we'll draw a little rounded triangle shape. And then I had his other front leg is off the ground. So we're just going to draw a little round shape for his other front paw. Once we have that all blocked in, we can kind of move on to the fun stuff like his face. So let's do his eyes now. Just going to draw these little circles right around that eye line that we blocked in before. And then another one on the other side. And then you draw an even smaller one on the inside for his pupils. Starting to turn into a character here. And we can give him some eyebrows. And then for his nose, we're just going to find that inner edge of his eye, and that's where it's going to come out. Just draw a line straight down. And his nose is kind of a little heart shape. So you just want to draw a little heart shape there. And then just connect it to that inner edge of his other eye. And I like to find that center of his nose helps me figure out where to put his nostrils, just a little curve shape here. All right, how's everyone doing? Looking good? Now let's roughen his muzzle, just a little round shape off his nose. And then on this side, I kind of like to make this line a little bit darker because it's also going to function as his smile. And then we can just put his chin in underneath, just a little semicircle. Doing good? Now let's roughen his, well, let's refine his cheeks first. So depending on where you put your circle, you might already have a nice cheek shape there, but I'm just gonna make mine a little sharper. And then do the same on the other side. And then we can roughen his tusks. And when I'm doing his tusks, I know there's a temptation to make them really sharp, but they're actually kind of rounded at the edge. Just give a little round edge, and then the same on the other side. All right, and then Chunky also has these tiny little fangs on the inside of those tusks. They're just kind of little triangle shapes. Gonna add those. And let's roughen his neck. Just connect that top shape down to his rib cage on either side. And for the top of his head, I usually just find that eyebrow and go a little bit up and follow that same shape over to the other side. And then for his ears, they're also just like little triangle shapes on either side. This little line inside. So let's do the other side. All right, let's refine these paws now. So on your little triangle shapes you made, let's just divide them into 3 smaller little toes. There's one. Same with the other ones. And for his front paw, I like to just give this little line to divide his toes from the rest of his paw. And then just divide that shape into 3 smaller shapes. So there's 1, 2, 3. And he's got a little other toe here on the inside. All right, and my favorite part of drawing Chunky that I feel like makes him really look like Chunky is giving him hair on the top of his head. You can do this however you want. Feel free to go a little crazy with it. Everyone's is gonna look a little bit different. I like to give him hair on the top of his head, sometimes off of his cheeks here, on the inside of his ears. And then he's got a really furry chest too, so you can add some fur there. And then he's got a little bit of a mane here on the back side of his neck. And for his tail, I'm just gonna find the back of that front leg, or front back leg, and just draw. You can make the tail however you want. I usually like to do this big swoop. And then give him like a little tuft of fur at the end, make it a little thicker at the end of the tail. And there's almost done. If you want, since Chunky's a carnivore, he's got little parrot markings on his face. Sometimes I'll draw those in too. And then once that's all done, if you want, you can also just go and erase these guidelines that we did earlier. You don't have to do this, but sometimes it makes it look a little cleaner. And there's Chunky, the carnivore. If you guys want more how to draw the Croods tutorials, check out the special features on the Croods A New Age. And back to you, Chris.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heidi. You really drew me in and shaped my perspective on how this all works. Yes, as Marisol said in the chat, we do have time for a couple of questions. Heidi will also be around at the end of the program, so we'll be taking some questions for her then. So does anyone have any questions for Heidi? And actually, while you're thinking, if you have a question, I'd love to see your drawings. If you want to hold them up to the screen, we could see some of those drawings. See how we did. Oh, wow.
That's great.
That is incredible. Heidi did a great job of teaching you all.
Good job, you guys. They look great.
They look much better than mine would have been. I would have been hopeless, unfortunately. Oh, that's a great question. How long did it take you to kind of perfect Chunky to what he looks like now?
I feel like I'm still perfecting Chunky, but but I don't know. I feel like I mean, I've been drawing the characters for over 2 years, and Chunky, maybe not one of the main characters that we drew as much as the others, but yeah, I don't know.
Never, an artist is never done perfecting their work, I think is the answer. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. All right, Tiana, I'm gonna unmute you there, or have you unmute rather. There we go.
Hi, my name is Tiana, and my question is, what was it like getting to really bring the characters to life and develop their personalities?
Great question.
That is a great question. So since Croods is a sequel, we kind of had, the main characters were established, and it was really fun to create the new characters to see how they would fit in that world with the old characters. And for me, my favorite was Dawn. I feel like I had a big part in developing that character. Yeah, and just took inspiration from like my nieces and nephews and people that I knew. But yeah, Did that answer your question?
Awesome. Thank you. We'll take just a couple more. Colleen, do you want to share your question? There, I let you unmute there. You should be able to. There you go.
I forget.
Oh, she wanted to know how long it took you to become a story artist. Like, what did you do to become a story artist? Like, how do you get this job, basically?
Well, for me, I actually grew up wanting to be a hand-drawn animator. And I drew my whole life with that as a goal, and then went to school for animation. And while I was at school, realized that I really liked the filmmaking aspect of animation instead of the acting aspect of animation, and so got into storyboarding. But I think if you have a passion for it, then you can make it happen. I would say to draw a lot, study film and how they are shot and told visually. You can draw from the movies that you like, draw from life, draw all the time. Drawing will always serve you well if you want to do this job.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's people usually don't know how to go from it's like they see you with the job, but they don't know where you started. Definitely. All right, Tanya, we'll do Tanya's, and then we're gonna have to move on, but we are gonna have Heidi around for the end too. So if you have a question for her, just keep it in your brain or write it in the chat now, and then we'll try to save that for later. I'm gonna unmute Tanya.
How long have you been drawing for?
Oh man, I've been drawing for a long time, probably since I was your age. But yeah, as long as I remember when I was a kid, I loved the movie 101 Dalmatians, and I just drew those characters all the time. And when I found out that people could work in animation for a job, I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. And then I just drew from then on. It's a very young age.
Great question. And just one last one to finish up, Heidi, that kind of goes along that vein. Were there any challenges or pressure that arose when drawing the characters because of the original success from the first movie?
I feel like there's pressure there, yeah, because these characters are so beloved. It took me a while of drawing them crappily before I felt like I was getting the hang of them. But practice makes perfect, so just got to keep at it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Heidi. And like I said, Heidi will be around at the end for more Q&A as well as everyone. So thank you so much. We're going to move on. And now we're going to head over to our educators, Damaris and Diana. Diana is a museum educator at the Natural History Museum, and her favorite area of the museum is the gardens. And she enjoys spotting hawks, taking pictures of the plants in different seasons there. And Damaris is also a museum educator at the NHM. Her favorite spot to roam around with in the museum is the bird hall, which is a really cool part of the museum. And she also thinks that hagfish are underrated. And I agree. Now, let's listen up and see what they're going to have us do.
All right, thank you, Chris. And hello, everybody. Today, we're going to be leading you through another activity. This time, we're going to be using our own imaginations and some arts and crafts. So for this activity, we're going to go ahead and take out that template that we sent out with your tickets. It kind of looks like this. So you can choose between a two-legged creature template right there on the left, or a four-legged creature template over on the right, your choice. However, if you're unable to print out the template for any reason, don't worry. We can still make a puppet with some simple shapes, and we're going to show you how to do that today. So we're going to go step by step through this activity today, and you can go along with us and make your creature right alongside us. However, if we happen to go too fast, or if you want to do it on your own, that is completely fine. You are more than welcome to just observe us making our own creature and do your project at a later time. So we just saw how DreamWorks story artist Heidi Jo Gilbert made the fantastical creatures and characters from the Croods. So with this activity, we're going to take some of those skills and we're going to make our very own creature, completely unique from our own imaginations, and we're going to make it move. Now, because this is Camp Croods, we can take inspiration from a lot of different places, from extant animals, meaning animals that are still alive today, or from the extinct Ice Age animals that Laura Tewksbury shared with us today. Now, you might be wondering what those sticks will be used for. So these sticks are going to help us in making our creatures move because we're going to be making creature puppets. And for those of us who have seen the first Croods movie, spoiler alert for those who haven't, we see how Guy creates these stick figure puppets to help him get out of trouble. Just like when he and Grug were stuck in the tar pit, they created a Carnivore puppet to help them get unstuck. So let's go ahead and get started with our activity. First things first, we got our finder supplies. So our supplies today are going to include paper to make our patterns, or one of these templates that we're showing right here. We also need some coloring supplies, things like pencils, colored pencils, crayons, markers, whatever you have is great. We also need a pair of scissors and a little roll of tape. Doesn't matter what tape, any works. We also need some glue. That can be liquid glue or a glue stick, whatever you have available is awesome. We also have an option between popsicle sticks or kebab skewers. Either one works. We're going to show you how to maneuver both of them. We also have the options between a metal brad or yarn/string. We're going to show you how to use both of these today, just in case you have one or the other. We also need a hole punch, totally okay if we don't too. And we also have decorative materials, things like yarn and glitter and feathers and leaves and flowers and whatever you'd like. And now that we have all of our supplies gathered together and we're ready to proceed with our creature, let's go ahead and do that. So for those of us with templates, we're going to go ahead and take one of our templates and color in the template shapes using those coloring materials that we mentioned. So we're going to hold off on the decorative supplies, those things like glitter or extra paper, until the very last step, because that's going to be our finishing touch to make our puppets kind of look like this. And Diana is going to show us what a final puppet kind of looks like. So Diana, in this case, created a beetle bear, taking inspiration from the black and blue patterns of a longhorned beetle, and she drew it out onto the shape. She also added things like wings and antennae, which brings us to a great point that as we're coloring our shapes in, this is an amazing time to add those unique features like wings, ears, or a tail too. Now, for those of us not using templates today, you can still make your own creature puppets by cutting out some basic shapes for the body, arms, and legs. For example, Diana is showing us a Moomith she made, which is a new creature that we get to see in Croods, A New Age. Now, we want to make sure that we're using those basic shapes, right? Like Diana used some circles, some rounded rectangles. We just want to make sure that any shapes we want to make move, like those arms, legs, or tails, we draw separate from the rest of the body. That way, we can connect them all together later and make it easier to bring our creature to life. So go ahead and decorate those lovely shapes. And if you're still decorating them, totally okay. Go ahead and keep decorating those. We're just going to move on to our next shape steps. So once we have our shapes all colored in and ready, let's go ahead and take our pair of scissors and carefully cut out the shapes. So it's really important that we remember to include any of the wings, ears, or tails you might have drawn during your coloring process. We want to make sure that those are attached to our body still. Now, if you need some help cutting out some of your shapes, please ask your adults for some assistance. Some of our shapes might need a little bit more of attention because you might have included some cool shapes onto your creature, things like horns, little skin details, wings, spikes. These are all kind of special cutting maneuvers that we need for these. So Diana included some spikes on her creature. So she's really taking her time and cutting them out one by one just to make sure that it looks nice and detailed for our final product. And Diana is just finishing up on those spikes a little bit, and she's just going to cut out the rest of her shapes so that it kind of looks like this. And we have all of our shapes cut out and ready. Perfect. So now that we have all of our shapes cut out and ready, let's go ahead and connect our limbs together. So for this, we're going to go ahead and take our hole puncher that we have and punch in those spots where we want our shapes to connect. So for our campers with templates, we've already marked those spots for you. Those are those little colored dots on each of the shapes. So go ahead and just punch through those dots. However, if we're creating our own animals from scratch, go ahead and just pick a spot where your shapes will connect. We don't have those dots, so we're gonna make them on our own. Now, if we don't have a hole puncher as well, or if our shapes are a little bit too small to hole punch, we can use a couple of different tools to connect our shapes together. So we can always use a small piece from our roll of tape in order to connect those shapes together, or we can poke holes using some sharp objects. Now, please, please, please ask your adults for some help in creating a hole with either a pen, pencil, or the sharp end of a kebab skewer. So here Diana is showing us how to just carefully poke a hole with that kebab skewer. Awesome. And now that we have holes in each of our shapes and they're where we want them, let's go ahead and connect them together. So if we are using string or yarn, I'm going to show us how to do that today. So let's go ahead and start off by cutting a small piece of yarn or string about the size of our index finger right here, nice and long. So for this piece of yarn, we're going to go ahead and grab the two shapes that we want to connect together. So I want to connect these two together, and we're going to go ahead and lay them right over each other so that our holes are right on top and we can see right through our puppets. Now let's go ahead and run our yarn through the middle of that shape like so. And we're going to stop about halfway through like this. And we're going to take carefully both ends of our yarn and we're just going to tie this together like how we would tie a shoe. Now, if we're having some trouble tying our string or our yarn, please ask an adult for assistance. And if we're tying this by ourselves as well, we just want to make sure to tie it twice so that it's nice and secure. We want to have that double knot so that we see right here. And you're just going to do this for each shape that you want to connect together. Now, for those of us that have metal brads at our disposal, Diana's going to show us how to connect our shapes with those metal brads. So we're going to do the same thing with our shapes. We're going to lay those holes on top of each other so that we can see right through them. And we're going to take the metal brad and place it through the hole like Diana just did. And then we're going to flip over our puppet along with the brad and flatten those little metal flaps on each side. We're making sure that it's as flat as possible so that the paper is nice and secure. We can move it around and it won't fly off. And we're going to go ahead and follow the same steps for each connection. So go ahead and just do the same thing. Tie your string, flatten your metal brads for each shape that you want to connect to your creature. So now that we have our creatures, it's coming together. They're all nicely connected and nicely decorated. Let's go ahead and tape our sticks on to make it into a puppet. So if we're using kebab skewers, we firstly want to start off by cutting out that sharp edge with the scissors for added safety. We want to make sure we don't get poked today. So go ahead and just snip that sharp edge off. And once our sticks are nice and prepped, we're going to make a tape hinge for our puppets. So for the tape hinge, we're going to need two materials, our sticks and our tape. Now we're going to cut a longer piece of tape around the length of your pinky. And once you have that longer piece of tape nicely cut, we're going to go ahead and just stick around a quarter of that piece of tape onto the stick, like so. So Diana right here is taping it about a quarter of the way in. And we're going to flip the tape over to the other side, and we're going to do the same thing so that half of our piece of tape is stuck onto the stick itself, and the other half is kind of hanging out in the air in a little loop. So now that we have this kind of prepped, we're going to take that part that's hanging out and we're just going to pinch it between our fingers so that the tape sticks to itself and makes itself flat. So now we have this piece of tape that is halfway onto the stick and the other half is kind of flat, floating in the air. So now we're going to grab two more smaller pieces of tape for every one stick that we have. So for this stick, we're going to grab two small pieces around half the length of our pinky. And we're going to use this to stick our tape hinge onto the puppet. So you're just going to tape on that flat piece that we pinched earlier. And you want to make sure to make it into like an X shape, just so it's extra secure. So we see Diana's kind of taping on that tape hinge, just taping on the flat part so that our sticks are still nice and flexible. Now, go ahead and do that for every shape that you want to hold up and kind of move around. This tape hinge is just going to make our puppets move around a little bit more easily, make it a little bit more flexible. So now we have our tape hinges on, our sticks are nice and ready, and we've turned our creature into a puppet. So our final step is just to decorate. So we're gonna take any decorative supplies you wanna add, like yarn, glitter, leaves, flowers, whatever you would like, and we're gonna glue them onto our puppet. So if we are using liquid glue, we advise you to let any added glue dry before using that puppet again, right? We wanna make sure it's completely dry before we pick it up. Now, if we're using glue sticks, we also just wanna make sure to use a little bit more glue than we normally would to make it nice and secure, since our decorative items might be a little bit more 3D. Now, we're just gonna go ahead and add those finishing touches to our creatures. If we haven't completed our creatures yet either, that is so okay. You can keep making your creature as we move into our next stop as well. Now, once you feel like your creature is nicely decorated to your liking and it's ready to be shown off, feel free to try carefully picking it up and moving it around using those sticks that we taped on earlier. And once you feel like that is great, now we have our very own creatures. And although we can't share all of our amazing creatures right now, we would still love to see them online. So if you would like to share your amazing creatures with us, with your grown-ups' permission, you can upload a picture or a video onto Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, and use the hashtags #CampCroods and or #CroodsNewAge. We would love to see them on there. Thank you so much for sticking around with us. Let's ooze on over back to Chris.
Thank you so much, Damaris and Diana. I can see that we are cut from the same cloth because I really love that activity. It was a lot of fun. Although I will say I am very lucky that I don't need to use my puppet to save my life, like in the movie, because mine does not look as good. Now, we do have one more presentation coming up. If you do have any questions for Damaris and Diana, feel free to get them in the chat at the end when we're taking questions for everyone. All right, so up next, we are going to be meeting with Brian Meredith and Mark Whitten. Brian is the supervisor and a puppeteer with the NHM's Performing Arts team. Mark is a puppeteer, and we're going to be introducing a very special guest. He is, in particular, going to be doing that. That guest is all the way from the Ice Age in Los Angeles. So take it away, Brian.
Hi, everybody. It is very nice to be here with you. I work with the performing arts team at the La Brea Tar Pits, and our job is to use art to communicate about science and discoveries. Today at Camp Croods, we are going to use some of the wonderful animals from the Cretaceous to talk about the fossils we find at the tar pits. Here to help is one of our most effective science communicators, Nibbles. Nibbles, are you there?
Brian! I am sorry I'm late to our meeting. I am so excited about Croods, a new age. Oh, I was just watching this program about it called Camp Croods. It's great. And guess what, Brian? You are in it. It's wild, huh?
Yeah, Nibbles, I'm doing the program right now.
You are?
Yeah, and you are a part of it.
I am?
Yeah, you are on screen right now.
OMG, Brian! Why didn't you tell me this was what our meeting was about?
Nibbles, I did tell you. We talked about it.
This is so cool! I am on Camp Croods!
This virtual programming is a little different for us, huh, Nibbles?
Oh, yeah, you could say that again. Whoa. Now I understand what all those emails were about. Oh, Brian, I am so excited for the museum to open again so we can see all of our guests in person.
Oh, yeah, me too. But in this virtual programming, we have slides.
Oh, slides are fun. Yeah.
Here we have Nibbles with some guests at the tar pits.
Yep. I loves me some interacting with the guests. And they loves interacting with me too, as evidenced by this. Pow! Yeah, Nibbles, Nibbles, Nibbles,
Yep.
Nibbles.
Yeah, Nibbles, we get it. You're loved.
Yes, I am.
Yep.
And I am so happy to be here with all of you virtually.
And we get to celebrate the new Croods movie coming out.
Croods. a new age. I am so excited, Brian!
Now, let's talk about some of the animals in it. The DreamWorks artists have referred to the animals in the Cretaceous as hybrids because they are made of two different species. At the tar pits, we have each of these animals represented. We're going to talk about a few. Let's start with the mammoths. These animals appear throughout the movie, and they look like a blend of a cow and a mammoth.
Yeah, that is a ridiculous animal. We have mammoths at the tar pits and mastodons. Oh, like Zed, the Colombian mammoth. You heard Laura talking about Zed.
Right, and then there's the moo part of mammoth. How about cows? Any cows at La Brea?
Brian, after the mammoths went extinct and before the museum was made, there was a cattle ranch called Rancho La Brea, so there were cows. Does that count?
Yeah, we can count that. Yeah, and now the new Croods movie also has wolf spiders.
Ooh. Brian, look out for the spider beast. Oh, right. Slides. Just slides, Brian.
Now, La Brea Tar Pits is famous for its dire wolves. It is the most common type of big predator found in the asphalt seeps. They find thousands of dire wolf fossils. This is why scientists think they hunted in large packs.
Who did?
The dire wolves.
Oh, Brian.
What's so funny?
Oh, nothing. I just think it is cute the way you refer to them as dire wolves is all.
What do you mean?
Well, there was a paper that came out recently that determined that what you refer to as dire wolves are actually on a different trajectory than wolves. So they're not wolves, actually.
They're not?
Yep. They even used some of our La Brea fossils to determine this. Yeah, it's in a paper that I read recently. Got a lot of time to read now that the museum's closed. But you can continue to call them dire wolves if you would like. However, I would appreciate it if you did not refer to me as a saber-toothed tiger. I'm looking at you, Brian.
It is a common mistake. I said that when I got hired over a decade ago. Nibbles just doesn't like me to forget it.
Well, I am just saying saber-toothed cat.
Okay. We have dire wolves, and they're going to be reclassified, apparently. How about spiders? Are there any spiders found in the tar pits?
Oh, Brian, I am so glad you brought it up. There were multiple jumping spider eyes from a section of the cephalothorax found in the matrix located in a fossil camel skull.
Come again?
There were multiple jumping spider eyes from a section of the cephalothorax head found in the matrix located in a fossil camel skull whose name was Clyde. We have a slide. Let's bring that up. Yeah. And there you see the spider eyes. And oh, that's Nola.
Now, our guests might not know who Nola is, Nibbles. Nola Price is a Fossil Lab volunteer at the tar pits, and she worked on this project for 6 years, coming in 1 day a week and then dedicating herself to prepping the camel skull and then sorting through all the matrix inside the camel skull to find all of the microfossils.
Right. She uses her microscope to find microfossils.
Right, and as Chris mentioned earlier, microfossils are those teeny tiny bones and seeds found in the matrix with the bigger fossils. Microfossils are so valuable to science because they give scientists a better idea of the ecosystem of the area, maybe more so than the bigger fossils from the bigger animals who were just passing through the area. And while we are on the subject of our wonderful museum volunteers, we have another volunteer at the Natural History Museum of LA County who works for DreamWorks.
Oh, Brian, I know who it is. It's Evan.
Right. Evan Boucher actually worked on the wolf spider movement. His job was to figure out how to make the wolf spiders move in a realistic way, like a wolf and like a spider. He credits his years of Spider Pavilion training at the Natural History Museum, starting him in the right direction.
Brian, Let's stay on track here with the right museum. This is a tar pits themed presentation.
Right. Okay.
Nice work, Evan.
Okay, so we covered the Moomits and the wolf spiders, and then, of course, there is the Carnivore.
Oh, man. Yep, that's a cross between a saber-toothed cat and a macaw, which is a kind of colorful bird. We don't have any macaws at the tar pits, but we do have birds. Big ones. Teratorns, for instance.
And we have saber cats, of course.
The second most common predator found at the tar pits.
We are very grateful to have you, Nibbles.
Well, I am very grateful to be here. Brian, you know, I am kind of a mix, too.
Well, we know you're not a tiger. You're a saber-toothed cat cub.
Yeah. I am a saber-toothed cat cub, but there is more to the story, Brian. I am a kind of a mashup animal, didn't you know?
What do you mean?
Oh, Brian. Let me introduce you to somebody. Mark! You're on, buddy. Oh. Hey, thanks, Nibbles. You're welcome, Mark. Hi, everyone. How's it going? Hi, Brian. How you doing?
Hi, Mark. Nice to see you. I didn't even know you were there.
I know. I've just been hanging out with Nibbles here, so that's pretty cool. And like Nibbles said, I'm the other half of the mashup animal. My name is Mark Whitten, and I am Nibbles' puppeteer. Now, you might be wondering what kind of puppet Nibbles is. You may already have some guesses. We're actually going to throw a poll up for you so that you can make some guesses while I chat away for a little while. So we'll get that going on right there. You may have also noticed that I am the voice of Nibbles, and indeed, I'm a voice actor. And you may have even heard me in another DreamWorks animated series called Home: Adventures with Tip and O, where I voice O, the cute purple booth. So it's really nice when worlds collide. But I've been working at the Natural History Museum for a little while now with the performing arts team. And very similar to what the talented artists at DreamWorks do when they bring to life the prehistoric creatures and characters that we see in the Croods. At the performing arts team at the museums, it's our job to bring the fossil evidence and the scientific research to life with our educational programs and, of course, with our puppets. And let's take a look at that poll. How are we doing there? We probably can close that out. Let's see, what do we got? Yes, it looks like the majority of you all said that Nibbles is a marionette, and you are correct. He is a marionette puppet. Basically, what a marionette puppet is that it's a puppet controlled from a controller from above with strings that come down and they attach to different points on the puppet's body. And then when you put tension on those strings or remove tension from those strings, it gives the illusion of bringing the puppet to life through its movement. And I'm gonna dodge off screen here for a second so I can show you the controller. If you take a good look at your screen, I'll bring this over here to view. You can see this controller. It is pretty big, actually. So I'm going to back up here from the camera, and you can see it actually detaches, so I can control his head separately from his body. And then you see all the strings attached there. And then as I lift it up into frame, we're going to see a flying saber-toothed cat, probably kind of keeping in line with the Croods themes here of mashup animals. You can see Nibbles is flying, and I can move the strings that move his tail. And of course I can make him smile, make his head tilt, and then he'll soar away and I will return to screen. So that is kind of a little bit of a look at the marionette style of puppet. Now I heard that we have some puppet builders in the audience. You all just finished that cool project with Diana and Damaris. So you know a thing or two about building, and I wanted to chat with you a little bit about how Nibbles was built. Our puppeteer, Robin Walsh, is a very talented puppet builder. She's the one that made Nibbles, and in order to do it, she did some of the same things that you all were doing, building your puppets. She first would have gone to the La Brea tar pits, though, and she would have talked to our paleontologists. She would have looked at the fossils. the skulls, the bones of this Smilodon fatalis, or saber-toothed cat, so that she could get a sense for all the sizes, the dimensions, the anatomy. And then she would have made drawings, kind of like Heidi Jo was making a drawing of the saber-toothed cat. Same thing, Robin would have made a drawing or a blueprint that she could have used as a reference for how she wants to build Nibbles. And then she would have started building these individual pieces like you were making with your puppets. And she would have fixed them together with screws, bolts, glue, and she would start to make a mock-up puppet. And we have a video to show you here of the mock-up puppet that she made. You'll be able to see Robin there. She has the controller, and you see skeleton Nibbles running around. And actually, it's a pretty cool looking puppet right now at this point, and it has a lot of great movement. But Robin didn't just stop there. We really wanted to bring this saber-toothed cat to life. So we went one step further. She started to stuff Nibbles, get some meat on the bones, and really fill out all the different features. And you can see we have another slide coming up where you'll see what she was doing to sculpt out the body. She'd used this modeling clay, and she sculpted Nibbles' face around. So we didn't just have a skeleton saber-toothed cat running around. And then after she was done filling out the body, we needed to make the fur coat. So we'll pull up a slide here of this fur coat that we've got for Nibbles. Now, you might be looking at this color and think to yourself a couple of things. What kind of camouflage is that? Maybe Nibbles was going through a punk phase. Perhaps he really likes limes. The actual answer is that this green fur is significantly less expensive than the actual finished fur. So Robin wanted to work with this less expensive material so she could get the tailoring perfect, so that when she used the real deal, she was ready to go. And then, of course, we have Nibbles in all of his glory with his real fur coat. And you can see him right there, looking good and ready to get strung up and do some cool performances. So I'm going to return to my better half, but thank you so much for allowing me to pop in and say hello. And Brian, I'm going to turn it back to you. All right.
Thank you so much for coming, Mark. It's always lovely to see you. It's
Brian?
nice when you can. Oh,
Brian.
Yep. Hi. What?
Brian, I wanted to mention one more thing before we go.
Oh, what's that, Nibbles?
There is another saber-toothed cat that lives at the tar pits, and it is much bigger than me. Full grown. Yeah, my mom, Callie the saber-toothed cat.
She is so epic and regal.
And a puppet like me.
Right. That there inside is Betsy Zyko. She is one of our performers. Now, Callie is actually considered a full suit puppet. So somebody is inside with their back legs and her back legs, and their arms are on arm stilts in her front legs. And all of our Callie performers at the tar pits are in very good shape because they have to hold that position for the entirety of the performance. And sometimes the performer inside is our very own Mark Whitten.
Oh man, that guy does a lot of stuff. Oh, tell them about how high-tech she is.
Right, now Callie is very much a hybrid too, because she is a two-person puppet. Her head is animatronic. So while the performer inside is making the body move, there's another performer that watches the show with a remote control, which makes Callie's head move back and forth, and her eyes blink, her mouth open, and with a few buttons in the back, they can make her roar.
It's so cool. You have to come and see it when we're open again, please.
Right. Thank you so much, Nibbles. And thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you so much, DreamWorks, for giving us such wonderful movies and characters. And we're very glad to be able to talk about them and the discoveries at the tar pits.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, Brian, do we have time for questions?
Oh, we're getting close to time. Chris, do we have any time for questions?
That is a great question in and of itself. We do have time. We're going to be doing questions with the whole group all together. So I want to thank you, Nibbles, especially for that moving performance. And, of course, Brian and Mark as well. Thank you. But now, if we want to bring our whole team on video, we're taking questions for everyone, performing arts, Joel, our director, right? Our educators, Laura, our Heidi, everyone. So feel free to start. I think the chat is open, but also can raise our hands. Just let if we do call on you, just let us know who you're directing the question at, so that we can let them answer. And we'll start with Rachel. I've unmuted you.
Hi, my question is for Laura. My 5-year-old wanted to know how many tar pits are there, known tar pits, around the world?
So known tar pits around the world is actually a great question, which ties in with a project that some of my coworkers and I have been a part of that is called the BREAS initiative. So it's an acronym, Bridging Research and Education at Asphaltic Sites. And it's one of those that actually, as we continue to build it, we keep finding about more and more asphaltic sites around the world. Some of them we found are in Cuba, Trinidad and Tobago, Ecuador, Venezuela, Peru, Japan, and Azerbaijan. So as we continue to build this, it's one of those that more people are like, oh, hey, can we join too? And we're like, we didn't even know you had asphaltic fossils. Please join us. So it's large and expanding, but especially areas where you have the right type of geological situation at the surface, at the right period of time, for the right length of time, which is why there are so many right around that area in South America, because that's where you have a lot of oil fields at the surface as well.
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Laura. And I had a question for our performing artists, for Brian and Mark. Is it hard to control the hand puppet?
Nibbles, you want to take that one?
Well, I like to think that I'm a pretty easygoing guy. So I think that I'm pretty easy to control. You know, I'm a lot of fun. It's just kind of easy when I'm on screen.
I've spoken to Mark, and I've also been involved with controlling a marionette, and it is difficult. It takes a long time because sometimes the strings get tangled, and sometimes the marionette that you're working with can be a little ornery.
Ryan, I am
but
difficult.
I'm being honest.
I am not difficult. Mark, do you think I'm difficult? No, Nibbles, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah, see, Mark thinks I'm fine, Brian.
There, of course he would. He's in the same room as you.
That's right, Mark.
Well, we can see that Nibbles very easy to work with, as you all can see. I'm sure we'd all agree. I'm not going to disagree with the Saber-Toothed Cat. So maybe we'll go to Rafi. I saw your hand was up. I'm going to unmute you there.
Okay, my question is for Joel, director, the Crawford. I love the movie when I saw it when it first came out in theaters, and I want to say that the thing that stood out for me the most is how colorful and how modern this world of the Croods 2 is. Was that something that maybe Heidi also can dive into the question? But was that something that you guys thought up from the beginning? Was that something organic? Because the first one is a perfect introduction to the series, but this one is so massive of a world that you created. But that's something organic. But that's something that you guys thought up from the beginning.
That's a fantastic question. That was very much a part of, picking up with the first Croods where we left off. Like I said, it sets up in a way, the first Croods such a dangerous world. It's falling apart and everything. And I remember the experience of watching Wizard of Oz with my 6-year-old daughter, and her watching the first 10 minutes and going, it's black and white, oh, like is there more? And I'm like, wait for it. And when the color comes on when she lands in Oz, she was just blown away. And I wanted the audience to have that very same experience, to go from Croods, the first one, where they experienced the Croods world, but to relate to the Croods as they walked into a whole new environment that, the colors are brighter, the animals are even more unique, and you experience that with them. So yes, I'm glad you caught that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, a follow-up to that, somebody else wanted to know what made you all want to do Guy's backstory instead of doing kind of a different adventure.
That's good too. It felt like the first Croods was so much Eep and Grug's story, and we got to see them meet Guy But I remember watching the first Croods. I didn't work on the first movie. I was working on some other movies here at DreamWorks, and I remember my experience as a fan going, "Oh, that's so interesting! Like, Guy's been traveling as a kid his whole life." And so when we approached the second one, it was almost like I have to see where he came from. And ultimately, it's a story. The second movie is a story about seeing things from someone else's point of view and meeting different people. And so it seemed like the right way in to now start the movie from Guy's point of view.
Excellent. Thank you. And Dennis, I'm going to unmute you. Let you ask a question there.
Hey, how's it going, guys? This question is for Joel and for Heidi. I was just wondering, as adults, do you, in your spare time, do you also enjoy watching more animated content than live action content? Or are you more like animated geeks and always, watching cartoons, even in your spare time?
Heidi, you wanna take it?
I feel like I am definitely more of an animation geek than the average person, and whenever an animated movie comes out, I'll make a point to watch it because I want to see what my peers in the industry are doing. And I'll also watch animated shows. Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of my favorite shows, but I watch everything. Like, I watch a lot of live action shows too.
Yeah, it'd probably be the same for me, where I think, it's one thing, it's very blessed to be able to work in animation. And so there is a bit of like enjoying other mediums as well. But for me, like, I actually love watching a lot of anime kind of because it shares some similarities, but also different sensibilities. And it's great to be introduced to other kind of aspects of filmmaking.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Colleen, I saw your hand's been up for a little bit too. And then I'll do a couple from the chat.
You want to ask?
Hey, what?
You want to know about the puppet?
Oh, yeah. Is there any more puppets that's not a saber-toothed tiger?
Cat.
Oh, that is a great question. Yes, there are a lot of puppets that are not just a saber-toothed cat. We have a Triceratops puppet, and there is a T-Rex puppet. And Brian, do you want to talk about some of the other puppets?
Yeah, at the Natural History Museum, we have those two big full suit puppets, the Triceratops and the T-Rex. They're only juvenile sized because they would be huge, right, if they were adult size. And and then we have some rod puppets. We have a pterosaur rod puppet. And what we've noticed about puppets and why the museum continues to invest in them is because there's such great talking points. You can engage with guests and then introduce them to the science. Similar to what Laura was saying about a movie like The Croods, where it's like we have this thing we're going to talk about right now. We have a common language. We see the puppet. We've seen Croods. And then the science conversations just take off from that. So hopefully we'll be getting more puppets, and maybe just keep getting puppets. It would be wonderful.
Yay, more
all
friends.
The puppets are funny as nibbles.
Yeah. Oh, you bet they are.
The T-Rex is a little grumpy, but yeah, we got nibbles though.
Yes, certainly our most playful of our puppets, I'd say. All right, we're going to take one from Jana and then one from the chat, and then we're going to have to call it. So let me get you unmuted, Jana.
Hi, thank you so much for your time. This question is for Joe. How much pressure you had, like, to bring the Croods to the second story this time around, and if you're planning, if you're planning to have the third one?
Yeah. I guess first to talk about the pressure. Yeah, a lot of pressure. Like I mentioned, I was just a fan of the first Croods and didn't work on it. And so I love the movie, and I know it's actually a very beloved franchise because I'd say it's about family, and everybody across the world kind of relates to, they see themselves in the Croods. And that was very much, we wanted to make sure we continued this lovable family story. And so, it has been a great journey of going, did we pay off what was set up in Croods 1? And it's been awesome hearing audience reactions and just hearing how positive, even on Rotten Tomatoes, it being a 95% audience score. And that's what really matters is you guys and your reception of this movie. So definitely yes with that. Did I answer? There was a second part.
Yeah. What about we're gonna have like a sequel, a third one?
Well, that's up to Universal and DreamWorks. If I had it my way, and I'm sure if Heidi had it her way, we love these characters. We spent so much time with them, and we would love to keep telling their story. So I think if it's kind of up to Universal to figure that out, but I hope so.
Me too. Thank you.
Yeah, I think if it's up to us, we'd definitely like to see another one. I definitely enjoyed the second movie. So we're going to take one more question. I'm actually going to combine two questions here. Somebody wanted to know about challenges you faced, Joel, and how you kind of go. The other question was how you go about kind of directing actors in an animated movie. So I figured that might be an area where you probably had some challenges. So love to hear that.
Yeah. So, even just making an animated movie takes so much teamwork because we're starting with nothing. There's no set. All these characters are created and designed, and then there's animators that move them. There's so many moving parts that really every challenge is the best way to handle is just using everybody's a specialist in their own area and listening to those voices. And so, there were definitely challenges in making them. One of the biggest ones that we hit was we were halfway done with this movie when the pandemic hit and everybody had to work from home. That's when I really appreciated I appreciated our crew, but it went to another level because seeing how everybody was being as creative as they could from home and able to still get this amazing quality of work. It really shined like how wonderful a crew we had. And so, yeah, that's working with the actors, I look to them to help build these characters and their insights into, what makes the character tick. And so we did a lot of improvising we have an amazing cast and all of them were so open to play. And we tried so many things and a lot of that's in the movie where it feels like very organic and kind of spontaneous.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joel, for answering that. Thank you all our panelists, presenters, for your presentations and answering the questions and leading us in our activities and Nibbles for, being yourself. And if our presenters want to give a final wave and then you can camera off. And
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, guys.
So, of course, I also want to thank all of our guests, all of you for coming today. I do hope that everyone learned a little bit more about the La Brea Tar Pits, the Ice Age, and how our museum studies it. And of course, thank you again, Universal Pictures Home Entertainment and DreamWorks Animation for working with us to make today happen. We're very excited about it. Please share your creations with us on social media with those hashtags Camp Croods and Croods New Age. I do hope everyone goes out and watches the Croods New Age if you haven't yet. And have a great rest of your day, everyone. Bye.